We're here for a Pokemon 7-in-1 review, or better known as the classic Remembrance Pokemon All Fairy, All Save Forever edition. Quite a mouthful, wouldn't you say? Recently, I reviewed the Pocket Go, a more Game Boy-esque emulation handheld that cost around $40, but had no slot to insert Game Boy cartridges. One of the things that stuck out in my comments the most is that people stated they might not be willing to pay such a high price for such a device. The market is oversaturated. There's a lot of these devices, why would they pay the money? So, many of my fans would only buy a device to play Pokemon anyways, being a handheld device. What about a cartridge that itself is over less than half the price, but includes 7 Pokemon games instead? Would that be worth the money and time invested? Stay tuned to find out. No lie, this cartridge is called the Classic Remembrance Pokemon All Fairy, All Save Forever, and it's only for Game Boy Color. Don't make that mistake, it's definitely not for the Nintendo Switch. Clearly you can play this on a Game Boy Advance and SP, but it's really made for people who like Generation 1 and 2. The cartridge itself is like a Pokemon Gold cartridge, but with more sparkles from the Crystal version, while looking like an original Game Boy cartridge. A bit strange put together, but a cartridge is a cartridge and it works. Looking at the front, the writing states Nintendo Game Boy, and it looks like a typical pirated Game Boy cartridge. The sides and back and everything else is blank, it's just the front that contains the information. Not the best of artwork on the front, but again, I'm here for the game, not the artwork. I specifically kept this for around 2 months to test and see if the battery would die early on, or if it does indeed save. It does literally advertise that in kind of its title and the name on the front of the cartridge. So yeah, it does save. It keeps it saved, battery's good, so that's great. I paid around $30 for a nice Game Boy Color to test this out with. The Pikachu edition. This is a Pikachu Game Boy Color that allows for Pikachu's cheeks to light up when it's on. A nice touch, I would definitely say, that Nintendo has lost on its newer console schemes. I really wish they would come back with different variations of consoles like this one. Let's plug this in to an authentic Pokemon themed Game Boy Color and test her out. Inserting the cartridge into the Game Boy Color might spark nostalgia, but I'm gonna tell you right now, when the menu boots up, it reveals 7 games. So not so much nostalgia, more like what I paid for. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna swap over to a custom backlit Pokemon themed Game Boy Advance. I got this years ago, and I'm doing this so that you can actually see things a lot better. There we go. To be honest, with what this game was named, I was extremely skeptical, not only on this just working, but actually having 7 games. And to my delight, it does indeed have 7 games from both Generation 1 and 2. I would have liked to have seen the trading card game on here as well, and also Pokemon Pinball on here, but the core Generation 1 and 2 games are all here for you to enjoy. The odd thing about this is that they're not in any particular order, just more scrambled. Starting off with Gold, Silver, Crystal, then Yellow, Red, Blue, and finally Green. Not that it matters, but if you were to give this to a person who has no idea about Generation 1 and 2, they might not know which game to start with, so it might leave them a little bit confused. Selecting any game will then boot the game as if it was the only cartridge in the Game Boy. Each game boots, plays in English, and saves. And that's a big point to talk about. The biggest one being Pokemon Green, which was originally a Japanese exclusive, is in English. So for those hardcore fans that never played Green, here's a chance to go literally back 20 plus years, get you a Game Boy Color, this cartridge, and play the original games that launched the franchise into what it is today. There's not much else to say about the cartridge other than selecting a game loads it like it's in a cartridge and not like an emulator or a ROM. There's no settings, no menus, no cheats built in. This is literally like if you had 7 cartridges just put into one. This is a classic experience, as close as you can get one-to-one without requiring 7 different Pokemon games, all built into one cartridge. Each game will play as it did originally in its original format, depending on the device you're playing it on. A Game Boy Color will have it play like it would play on a Game Boy Color. The game is viewed as a Game Boy Color game, which works in devices that are compatible with it. So if you were to attempt to play this game in a Game Boy Pocket or an original Game Boy, I wouldn't suggest it, since Pokemon Crystal requires Game Boy Color anyways. So just get a backlit Game Boy Color or Advance or an SP, which will all play this because it's a Game Boy Color game. I had a great time playing through all of these games once again, and without speed up or save states, it was still an enjoyable and great time walking down memory lane. I would highly recommend this to anyone looking to get an authentic Pokemon experience once again. Try it out, see how you like them. For around $2 game, it's a pretty decent deal. Saves you all the need for 7 games. Carrying them around can be pretty annoying. So outside of a collector, it's probably a really great deal for people who just want the nostalgic experience, or maybe they never even got it and they want to see what it was like.